My name is Vera. I'm 34, and lately I've been living on autopilot. Morning coffee from a vending machine, the gray bridge, the office reception desk where I repeat the same polite lines. Good afternoon, how can I help you? Evenings mean an empty kitchen and the kind of silence that feels thicker every year. The divorce happened 4 years ago, but I still tell myself this is safer. Fewer expectations, fewer wounds. The yoga retreat wasn't about trend or curiosity. It was survival. The ad promised 7 days of silence, breath, and warm ground beneath your feet. I chose one in the mountains, beside a small lake. Pine cabins smelling of resin, air so clear it made your lungs ache, dawns that turned the sky to gold. On the first evening, we gathered around a fire. The instructor smiled like someone who'd already met every version of burnout. People introduced themselves, designers, teachers, programmers. I'm Vera, I said quietly, just trying to stop running. Next to me sat 2 women. They looked city bright, sneakers still clean, laughter easy. I'm Arina, said one, 32, short honey-colored hair, confident eyes. Came here to learn how to breathe properly. Deadlines don't count. The other was Oksana, 33, a photographer. They teased each other softly, sharing a blanket, and I assumed they were a couple. The next morning, we practiced on the wooden terrace. Sunlight spilled over the hills, painting our faces with warmth. I tried not to look at Arina, but failed. Something about her steadiness drew me in. The way she adjusted her wristband, the grounded rhythm of her breath, how she smiled at her own mistakes. A few times our eyes met, accidental, fleeting, but enough to stir something I hadn't felt in years. Days began to blend together in soft colors. Dawn meditation, hikes to waterfalls, evenings of herbal tea, and stories by the fire. Arina and Oksana always found a spot near me. They asked questions, small at first, then real. When Arina asked what brought me here, I said, I just want to learn how to live again, without a script that doesn't fit anymore. Oksana joked, scripts are for movies, not for humans. Arina just looked at me and said quietly, then breathe wider, Vera, and stop apologizing for wanting more. I started waiting for them without admitting it. I'd smile when I heard their laughter down the path, come early to breakfast just in case they'd be there. I even wrote down the names of their favorite teas, afraid I might forget the details that made me feel seen. One afternoon, the instructor announced a partner class, Intro to Acro Yoga. My stomach turned. I wasn't used to trusting anyone's hands with my balance. When pairs were chosen, Arina looked straight at me. You with me? I nodded, trying to hide the nervous warmth flooding my chest. Her hands were firm, steady. Focus on a point at the horizon, she whispered, guiding my posture. Falling is allowed. Of course, I almost did. She caught me by the waist, laughing, and for a moment the world tilted in the right direction. That evening, the 3 of us sat on the pier. The lake breathed slowly, like a giant creature asleep under the moon. Oksana showed us photos of clouds, and I thought, this piece is dangerous. It makes you feel alive. When I looked at Arina again, her gaze wasn't friendly anymore. I turned away first, heart loud in my ears. I told myself I was imagining things. Retreats like this make people softer, more open. It wasn't love. It was the air, the quiet, the mountains pressing silence into your chest until you start confusing calm for connection. At least that's what I repeated while lying in my narrow bed, listening to the wind brush against the cabin window. Still, when morning came, my first thought was her. The next day we went hiking, a long trail through pine forest and moss-covered stones. The group walked in pairs, laughter echoing between trees. Oksana carried her camera, darting off the path every few minutes, chasing the light. When the guide stopped to explain something about local herbs, she waved at us. "Go ahead, girls. I'll catch up. The light here is perfect." And just like that, it was only Arina and me. The forest felt different and quiet. Birdsong, the crunch of gravel under our boots, the rhythm of two breaths falling into the same pace. Arina broke the silence first. "You seem lighter than the first day." I smiled. "Maybe that's just clean air." She laughed softly. "Or maybe you finally started breathing." We reached an old stone bridge where the stream widened into a mirror. Arina sat on the edge, dipping her bare feet into the cool water. "Funny," she said, watching ripples move. "I was afraid to come here. Thought I'd be the only one who doesn't know what she's doing with her life." I sat beside her, close enough to smell the faint scent of eucalyptus on her skin. "I was afraid too," I admitted, "afraid to stop pretending I'm fine." She looked at me then. No smile, no mask, just warmth. "And now? I'm still scared," I whispered. "Good," she said. "Fear means you're alive." The moment stretched thin. Sunlight, wind, a pulse in my throat. Her hand brushed mine, maybe by accident, maybe not. Neither of us moved away. When she turned her face toward me, everything slowed. The trees, the stream, even the sound of my breath. The kiss was quiet, almost shy. A touch, a question, an answer all at once. Her lips tasted of green apples and tea. My heart trembled like it had forgotten what to do with warmth. When we pulled apart, she whispered, "You okay?" I nodded, but inside, something cracked open. Not in pain, but in relief. We walked back without speaking. The air between us was electric and gentle at the same time. I wanted to ask if she and Oksana were together, but the words stuck in my throat. At dinner, when we joined the others, Oksana looked up from her plate and smiled. That knowing kind of smile that doesn't need explanations. Later that night, she found me by the fire pit, wrapped in a blanket. "You think too much," she said simply. "And no, we're not a couple. We're just friends. Always have been." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The firelight flickered across her face, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight of everything I'd kept locked away. The need to be touched, to be seen, to belong. Arina came over then, sitting quietly beside me, her shoulder brushing mine. No words, just the sound of crickets, and somewhere far away, thunder rolling softly over the hills. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that kiss again. Real, impossible, inevitable. And I understood something I'd been running from for years. Maybe the life I wanted didn't have to look like the one I lost. The last 2 days of the retreat felt unreal, as if time had slowed to watch us. Arina and I didn't hide what was between us, but we didn't name it either. We still joined the group for classes, meals, meditation, but every glance carried a secret. Sometimes our hands met when passing cups of tea. Sometimes our knees brushed under the table. It was simple, unspoken, enough. On the final evening, everyone gathered again by the fire. People shared what they'd learned about breathing, forgiveness, letting go. When it was my turn, I hesitated. "I came here to escape my life," I said quietly. "But maybe I found a new one instead." Arina's eyes met mine across the flames, and that was all the answer I needed. The next morning, the retreat ended. People hugged, exchanged contacts, promised to stay in touch, promises that would fade like smoke. Oksana loaded her camera gear into the car, grinning. "Back to the real world," she said. "Maybe this is the real one," I answered, and she smiled knowingly. Arina stood a few steps away, her bag on her shoulder. We both knew the moment was fragile, too new to define, too too real to ignore. "I live in the city," she said softly. "Maybe you should visit. No yoga mats, no rules, just coffee." It wasn't a question, but it felt like a door opening. I said yes before I could think twice. When I got home, my apartment felt smaller than I remembered. The noise of traffic outside, the flicker of the old kitchen light, everything suddenly too loud, too gray. I unpacked my bag, but the scent of pine still clung to my clothes, the memory of her voice to my skin. That night, I wrote a resignation letter, not out of impulse, but because I finally understood that comfort and happiness aren't the same thing. A week later, I boarded a train to the city. Arina met me at the station. No big gestures, just a quiet smile that made the chaos around us disappear. We spent that weekend walking through parks, drinking cheap wine, talking about everything and nothing. There were moments of silence, too, comfortable and full of meaning. She reached for my hand once, and I didn't pull away. It wasn't perfect. I was still scared of what people would say, of making the wrong choice again, of being too late to start over. But every time I looked at her, those fears softened. Arina never promised forever. She just said, "Let's see where it takes us." And somehow that was more honest than any vow I'd ever heard. A year has passed since that week in the mountains. I live in a small apartment with a view of trees instead of walls. I work part-time at a local gallery now, surrounded by light, color, people who talk about art instead of spreadsheets. Arina and I still practice yoga together on Sundays. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we laugh until it hurts. Sometimes we just sit quietly, watching the city breathe below us. Life didn't suddenly become easy. It became real. And I finally understood that peace isn't something you find far away. It's something you build when you stop pretending, when you let someone see you, truly see you, and stay anyway. That kiss by the bridge wasn't just the start of love. It was the moment I stopped running from myself.